The human face is our primary tool for connection, for empathy. We read it for safety, for love, for warning. A smile signals peace, a frown signals distress. But what happens when that window to the soul is slammed shut? When a human being, or something resembling one, stares back at you but offers nothing. No emotion, no recognizable features, only a blank porcelain slate, a rotting hockey mask, or worst of all, your own face, reflecting in a mirror-like sheen. Horror doesn't just scare us with sharp knives and loud noises. The most terrifying horror, the kind that gets under your skin and refuses to leave, is psychological. And no tool in cinematic history understands this better than The Mask. Why are we so obsessed with these killers? Why do their faces, which are less than faces, provoke such a visceral reaction? Today, we're going to do more than just recap movie history. We're going to unmask the monsters. We're going to dissect the profound psychological mechanisms that make cinema's most iconic masked killers so utterly terrifying. We start with the gold standard, the archetype, Halloween's Michael Myers, also known as The Shape. When John Carpenter and his crew were looking for the perfect face for their villain, they didn't design something monstrous. They didn't use blood or scars. They bought a $2 William Shatner Star Trek mask, painted it white, and widened the eye holes. They created a void. In psychology, the primary fear activated by a blank mask like Michael's is dehumanization. This is the core reason it is so effective. Our brains are hardwired by evolution to recognize faces. It's a survival mechanism. This process is so powerful that we see faces everywhere. In burnt toast, in the fronts of cars, in clouds. It's called pareidolia. But Michael Myers disrupts this basic instinct. His face looks almost human, but it gives our cognitive system zero feedback. When you look into the eyes of a normal human killer, you might see anger, rage, or perhaps a twisted sort of joy. This allows you to empathize with the threat on a basic survival level. You can predict their moves, even understand their motive, or appeal to their humanity. But what happens when you stare into the void of a white mask and find nothing? It taps into the primitive fear of the Uncanny Valley. This mask isn't alive, but it isn't dead. It exists in a terrible liminal space. This lack of feedback forces the viewer and the victim to project their worst possible fears into the empty spaces. You're not fighting a man with a motive. You're fighting an inevitability, a shape. You can't negotiate with a blank slate. You can't make it understand pain. The horror of Michael Myers is a horror of the machine, the horror of a predatory object that cannot and will not stop. The mask is not a covering for a face. The mask is the monster. It is a terrifying representation of true nihilism, the utter absence of human meaning. Jason fundamentally is a tragic figure, a bullied, disfigured child, ostensibly dead, then resurrected or revealed to be alive, driven by the trauma of his own death and the loss of his mother. When we see his unmasked face, it evokes a mix of pity and disgust. That human element is complex. It's messy. The mask fixes that. The hockey mask is rigid, industrial, and utilitarian. The moment Jason puts it on, he is no longer Jason, the bullied, grieving son. He becomes Jason the killer. This is a concept known in psychology as deindividualization. In experiments, people are far more likely to commit acts of violence and antisocial behavior when they feel their personal identity is obscured, like wearing a uniform, a mask, or simply being hidden in a large crowd. For Jason, the mask doesn't hide his pain. It weaponizes it. It allows him to shed his last remnants of humanity, the part that might feel fear or regret. The mask transforms him into a symbol. He ceases to be an individual subject to the laws of nature and man and becomes a relentless force of consequence for moral transgression. Jason's mask is a terrifying reminder that the most monstrous acts require us to first sacrifice our own identity. He shows us what a person is willing to do when they are no longer themselves. But the masks aren't just for mute brutes. In the 1990s, the horror landscape shifted. We met villains who were intelligent, highly communicative, and disturbingly present. For them, the mask was not a covering, but a performance. This brings us to the terrifying psychopathology of the game player. Let's look at Ghostface from Scream. The genius of Scream is that the mask is a mass-produced, easily obtainable commodity. The Ghostface mask isn't tied to one killer's trauma or one specific ancient evil. It can be anyone. The psychology here is identity manipulation and the performative psychopath. The killers in Scream, Billy Loomis, Stu Macher, and all who followed, are performing a role. They aren't driven by supernatural forces. They are driven by boredom, resentment, and by their own pathological obsession with horror tropes. The mask is their costume for the play they are directing. It taps into a very contemporary anxiety, the fear that the person you trust, the person in your friend group, is secretly wearing a metaphorical mask. When Ghostface asks, "What's your favorite scary movie?" he's not just asking about taste. He's exposing the horror fans' desire to participate in the carnage they admire. The mask is a terrifying avatar for the death of authenticity. And then there's Hannibal Lecter. His most iconic mask is a restraint device. It is a tool designed to protect us from him. The horror here is not that he's a blank void, but that his intelligence and his charisma are his primary weapons. The psychology of Hannibal is the intellectual predator. The restraint mask is terrifying because it visualizes the extreme antisocial nature of his hunger. It is a graphic admission from society. This man is so dangerous we cannot let him have free access to his own face. His real mask is his polite doctor persona. The physical leather and metal cage is just the truth made visible. When he's in the mask, the threat is at its highest, precisely because we know exactly what is being restrained. As horror has evolved, so has the mask. The modern era has discovered an even more profound, unsettling psychological truth. The most terrifying face might be your own. Think of the Purge movies. The killers don't wear blank, expressionless slates. They were smiling, caricature-like faces of wealth and privilege. This is the horror of societal permission and the death of conscience. These masks aren't designed to hide identities as much as they are designed to signal allegiance to a state-sanctioned ritual. The smile of the mask is a monstrous perversion of a social signal. They say, "This isn't crime, this is therapy, this is our right." The fear is that a simple change in law, a single day of chaos, can reveal that your polite neighbor is, psychologically, no different than Michael Myers. Cinema's most iconic mask killers don't scare us because they're powerful, or because they use elaborate traps. They scare us because they are masterful psychological mirrors. They are voids that reveal our own projection. They are masks that show the identity we are willing to sacrifice. They are performances that weaponize our own culture. They are mirrors that expose the shadow we refuse to look at. You could run from a man with a knife, we can fight a monster, but we cannot escape the horrifying truth that these masks represent. Because in the end, the psychological terror they inflict is about us. It's about the parts of our own minds we cannot see, and the faces we are terrified we might find if we look a little too closely in the mirror. So the next time you watch one of these films, don't just look at the mask. Look at the face that isn't there, and ask yourself, what are you truly looking at?